employers and managers who had to fire their best employee. What happened? We hire a lot of people in recovery who are a part of the drug court program under the condition that they will be terminated if they go back to jail for drug alcohol charges. This co-worker was our hardest worker and always picked up shifts and got tons of compliments. So it really sucked when she relapsed and failed her P-test with drug court. She got sent to jail for a week and we had to fire her. I still kept in touch with her, and when I found out she was pregnant, I convinced my boss to hire her back. One last chance. I'm so happy I wasn't wrong because she's about to celebrate her 4th year of sobriety and she's now management. That is awesome. Had a great waiter, Robert. Sucker could run circles around the entire staff. He knew the kitchen as well. Could jump in at prep and assist if we got backed up and still tend to his tables. Dumbass put a $3 bottle of White Zinfandel in his backpack, right in front of a security camera, and while the owner was sitting at the bar eating. He was a student and working part-time. He had to be bringing in $300, $500 in cash a week. Worked in a restaurant at hotel chain. Management regularly found meaningless reasons to suspend various employees or cut hours. This one guy had been there almost 13 years. Clients loved him. Staff appreciated his presence and he often came to the rescue of anyone requiring help. Everyone could depend on him and he supported everyone. He had, like everyone in a restaurant, bumped heads with management now and again. Like everyone, on one particular season they decided they were going to groom him in the eventuality to take on more responsibility. His position would eliminate his rights to tips, but it came with insurance, a retirement plan and steady pay. He had kids, was in his mid-40s. It all made sense why someone would take that job. He would however no longer be in the union. Fast forward to the day after his training is complete. The guy comes in with his management uniform and all. Some waiter calls in sick, and instead of him calling in another employee, he decides he was going to handle a few tables and the management responsibilities. At the end of the shift, the hotel manager summons the guy into his office, like the boss of his boss. They fired him straight away. He was escorted out of the building and our boss said there was strict rules and management working tables harmed the hotel's image. It was complete BS. He had maybe taken 2 tables and split the rest amongst the rest of the staff. Everyone basically agreed they promoted him just to get him out of the union to be able to fire him. A number of employees left shortly after for other various reasons. It was a sort of shaking up the coup and anyone who wouldn't fall in line would be shown the door. Today, that restaurant no longer exists. They closed down maybe 2 years later. Rebranded the restaurant from American Steakhouse to Italian French dining. New cooks, new waiters, new management. It was just sort of the catalyst or the first domino. And that's how Olive Garden was born. Had a guy who would work his butt off daily inputting data into spreadsheets. Would come in, put in solid hours of actual work, not goofing off. He would literally get 4 times as much stuff done a week as anyone else in the office. After 3 weeks straight of this, other people start to take notice and occasionally ask him to help them out when they are behind, and he obliges. This gets worse and worse, and eventually people are basically just walking all over him while they spend all day Facebooking and whatnot, because he won't say no if they ask him to help with their work. The dude just keeps trucking through though. About 4 months into working there, it's gotten to the point where you can hear the extra cunty girls talking about leaving early and not getting in trouble because he will just do all the work for us if we ask anyway. Well, the guy goes into the boss's office, and I work right next to it so I can hear more or less the entire conversation. I am paraphrasing, but it went something like this. I would like a raise. I am doing way too much work for how much I am getting paid. Everyone else who works here is so dang lazy. I even have people making jokes about how I will do their work for them and they will get paid for it. Well, name. I can sympathize with you, but you have to understand, I can't just give you a raise. If I give you a raise, I would have to explain to everyone why you got a raise and they didn't. You could tell them it's because I am doing half of their work for them while they look at stupid memes. I'm sorry, name. It just wouldn't work out well. Well then, is there any positions available above mine that I could apply for a promotion to? I don't think we can really look into a promotion this early into you working here. We would need time to properly evaluate your work ethic. Seriously, you seriously just said that to me? I'm not going to break my back doing an entire office's work for a company that doesn't give two shoots about me. You and this entire office can go frick themselves. He walks out of the office fuming mad and yells, "Hey everyone, boss just denied my raise, so no more leaving work early for any of you lazy frick heads, cause I fricking quit." It was like a scene from Office Space only in real life. He was one of my best weekend workers, dependable, always on time, really good at his job. I got a call from my management on the 4th of July saying we are going to need to find a replacement for name. I say, why? Did he find a better job? My management, no, he was arrested for murder last night. So let's just say I didn't have the chance to fire him. I was dumbfounded when I got that call. My dad had a guy working for him who was great, could work long hours, not complaining about being on call, etc. Well, he got caught freaking a nurse in his office. He got divorced and had a nervous breakdown and started threatening to kill everyone. So they had to fire him and have him banned from the premises. Oh, and after that we caught him hiding in the woods behind our house. Crazy guy. Oh, and he sued us for wrongful termination. Really dedicated guy. Top manager for retail job I worked at lost her keys to the store that also had the keys to all the registers on the keyring. The registers started going short or would be empty aside from the change and dollar bills in the drawer. This went on for months. Corporate found out after installing a new set of security cameras overnight without her knowledge. She enlisted a group of sales associates to do most of the dirty work, but they found out she was the ringleader when they found out all the sales associates would bring her the stolen money and she would dole it out after taking her cut. We had a field tech that was awesome. Probably the best I've ever seen or heard of. He was knowledgeable, skilled, and personable. He was always early, worked great under stress when things went south, and often finished jobs early if we had off-hour issues. He was always available and it seemed like he was in his truck and ready to get going right away. Well, it turns out that he was always in his truck and ready to go. He had been living in his company truck for some time and just pulled off the side of the road each night at a utility pole, climbed up, stole some cable TV and set up shop for the night. We found that out and had to let him go. Also the coke and the M. Sounds like the ultimate field tech. 24 hours availability, no problem thanks to the M. And he probably creates more calls if there aren't any by stealing copper wiring. Obligatory, not me but co-worker. I had joined the company a few months prior, was still getting to know the various details of my job, and this guy was the star of the company. I spent as much time working with him as I could honestly. I mean, he was the freaking star. He was a solid programmer, great project manager, awesome account and customer management skills, and he had a knack for thinking outside the box on creative solutions. He loved working there, had rejected offers from Google, Facebook and Pinterest that I know of, and then he fricked the director's 16-year-old daughter. Age of consent is 16 here. He was 31. Welp. That would not tend to win you any friends in the management. Not me, but a story from when I worked at Disneyland a long time ago in attractions, rides. The area manager loved this one particular cast member, employee, like, this was the son he never had. This CM was promoted to lead on one of the roller coasters fairly quickly in his regime. One night he was the lead on the closing crew, and the crew decided to ride after hours. Idiots that they are. They went without the lap bars down, and on one turn the ride is visible from the walkway. Even though the park was closed to guests, security was still in the park, and a security guard saw the train go by with the CMs standing up through the turn. Security gets a hold of Theme Park 1, the manager in charge of the park for the night, who calls Attractions 1 to find out what's going on. Not surprisingly, every CM who was on the closing crew that night was fired. Unfortunately, so was the prodigal son, because he was the one who dispatched the train without the lap bars down. I didn't have to do the firing, but for whatever reason, my colleague had it in for this mid-level supervisor. She was a great trainer, did everything she was asked, took initiative, and then some. She was always worth well more than what she earned, and had an absolute passion for the work. We worked with kids with autism. After a few months of having some vendetta against her, my colleague wrote her up, literally for being away from her desk too often. Her uncle had recently been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer and she was the only relative in town who could care for him. So the times she was away from her desk, She was stepping out to cry when she felt overwhelmed and didn't want people to see her cry. I found out after she was let go for this that she had informed the supervisors of this when her uncle was diagnosed and that she was feeling very emotional about it and may need to take days off, take more frequent breaks to gather herself again and remain productive. Instead of showing compassion, my colleague used this as an opportunity to terminate her despite having no other red flags, feedback, or performance issues. There was simply a personality difference and she didn't gossip with the other supervisors. And this was all done with our other colleagues and supervisors' blessings. I don't work for this company after I found out about this. Obligatory happened to a coworker working at a bank. My branch had the biggest superstar in the state, always crushing sales numbers. He generated more revenue than the rest of the branch combined. He set up a really big business account presentation, but his mother died literally on the day he was supposed to give the talk. Branch manager stepped in, held the presentation. The guy had built everything up. It was essentially a done deal. Branch manager just had to get a signature on the paperwork. Obviously feeling bad for him, thinking he deserved the credit, they booked the deal under his name the next day. Technically, to get credit for a deal you have to be there at signing. Both were fired within a week for sales manipulation or full use of the rules. I wasn't the manager, but we had a supervisor who was a rising star in the company, turned a struggling operation into one that was running well under budget and was generally easy to work with. We also had a mechanic who was a lazy sack of crap and nobody could ever find him. So one day the operations manager was looking at the security footage trying to figure out what the mechanic was doing so day and caught him selling pills out of his truck in the parking lot. So he called the police. When the police showed up, the mechanic was in his truck, in the middle of selling drugs to the supervisor. They were both fired. The operation went from under budget to being $50,000, $100,000 over for the next few months. Corporate set a trap and baited him into stealing. He was a great guy, fun and interesting, easy to get along with. He would volunteer to take the early shifts and open the store. He'd receive the new inventory and stock the shelves himself. His cash was always correct and he never did anything wrong, until he did. One morning he opened the new stock shipment and loaded the shelves. There was an extra item in the box that wasn't listed on the manifest. The correct procedure was to add it to inventory and put it on the shelf. He instead opted to claim it wasn't there and took it home. The perfect crime, right? I had to fire him the next day, and it sucked. To be fair, integrity is what you do when no one is looking. Part of my job is to process expense reports from the sales department. I noticed one month that the top salesman had claimed a plane ticket expense twice. Once when he booked it and then again when he took the flight months later. I reviewed his past expenses and noticed he was doing this regularly. When he booked the flight originally he would claim the full amount of the ticket. Then when he used the flight he would claim each leg of the trip as a separate daily expense so that the receipt amounts wouldn't match so as to avoid detection. This is how I figured out he was doing it intentionally. I showed the evidence to the CFO and he was gone the next week. I only went back 3 years but he stole about $10,000 over those 3 years. You'd think people who made a certain amount of money wouldn't risk it by stealing, but then you'd be wrong. Not me, but I was working in retail, and one of the customer service guys was being groomed for management. He'd been there for a while, was trusted to count money and with the safe combination, opened if managers couldn't act. He was a cool black guy. His race is important to the story, but a bit cocky and arrogant. My cousin also worked there, who was also cocky and arrogant. Anyway, my cousin put in his 2 weeks, but wasn't being a bad employee. My cousin didn't like the soon-to-be manager, because they were pretty similar in a lot ways, and they clashed because of it. On my cousin's last week, unprovoked, he approaches the guy and says, "You look like a big black dong." The guy walks up to my cousin, puts his finger to his head and says, "Do you have a problem with me?" It ended there with my cousin walking away, then reporting he was threatened. Because a finger made contact, the guy was fired. My cousin was a dong and didn't regret it and laughed about it with my other friends, who were also dongs. Best Buy manager. Had a guy in Geek Squad who was a great salesperson, probably top 10 in the district. He had an incident during a data transfer where he accidentally transferred another client's information to the external drive. The customer flipped out, and unfortunately due to company policy, we had to let him go. Fortunately, he knew it was going to happen, but it was just a matter of time. I work at a store where we have to ask for donations for the charity we support at every transaction. We're in competition with the other stores in the chain, and whichever store has the highest percentage of donations after 3 months get a bonus. Every employee, cashier or not, gets $100. Well, one of my assistant managers was awesome. Always had the highest percent of donations per transactions, and highest dollar amount. She always did a great job in all other aspects of the job as well. Well, it turns out she was offering every customer her employee discount if they donated. So if someone spent $500 and she gave them 30% off, they wouldn't at all mind donating $10 to $20 per transaction. Well, it came back from corporate what she was doing and we had to let her go. We had a new girl get 100% for 2 weeks in a row on her charity donations. Turns out she'd been charging everyone for at least a $1 donation, regardless of whether or not they'd approved. We had to actually refund donations to those angry customers that really didn't want to donate. I used to work for Dell back in 1998 to 2000 in their sales department. This is just right before people ordered online, so it was still a call center. To make a really long story short, I was one of their best sales reps. Top 3 every month. I was making about $5,000 a week as a 23-year-old. They decided to replace me, and most of my team, with temps making $11 an hour and no commissions. Only I didn't know this. I was given a great opportunity to train a new class of incoming salespeople. Little did I know I was training our replacements. Once they hit the floor and were running, they fired me and about 200 other salespeople. Frick Dell. Oh, then a few years later even the temps got fired so they could move all those jobs to a call center in India. Frick Dell. He was our fastest forklift operator. Guy could get a truck loaded in 15 minutes. But he started developing a crappy attitude and we just couldn't work with him. The new operators we have take 30-45 minutes to get a truck loaded and they're legitimately a little dumb and have a hard time reading. I don't know if it was worth it. Probably developed an attitude because he was tired of getting paid the same as those who'd take twice as long as him. I managed a coffee shop bakery. My best employee was this kid named Alexis. He was sharp and was quick to pick up on all the skills required to work in our fast-paced environment, but he was also someone who would stay out really late at night partying, and it would affect his attendance. One night in particular he calls me up and tells me he's stuck in Baltimore. We live in DC, and won't be able to make it in for his shift the following morning. He called me at 7 p.m. The last MARC commuter train leaves at 9:30 or so, and there's a free circulator that runs throughout the city. I used to visit Baltimore pretty regularly at the time because there was a girl I was seeing from up there. Anyways, I only had 1 day off a week, and was working 14-hour days. It was the last straw in a series of no-call no-show situations where he had left me hanging for our busiest days. I called his phone that same night and told him that if he didn't show up for his shift on time the following morning, he was fired. He didn't show up, and I never saw him again. This was a few years ago, but I sometimes wonder what happened to him. He was a really sharp kid, but he did way too many drugs, and wasn't as clever as he thought he was, so would often get into trouble with police. You've been visited by the good sleep oinker. You will be blessed with cozy, restful sleeps, but only if you comment sleep type porker. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.